Hi, HR Nation. Welcome back to another episode of the HR Leaders Podcast, the show where we explore the future of work with industry experts and HR executives from the world's leading global brands. Today, we're joined by Joan Burke, Chief People Officer at Docusign. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Great, Chris. Thanks for inviting me. Happy to be here.
It's great to have you on the show, and it's always even better when it's a product that I use.
I like that.
Yeah, it's always a good start to a call where I said to the team, I said, oh, well, I've got Joan on the doc. He said, oh, no, great. Oh, yeah, tell her how much we love the product. I'm not just saying that. We use it for all of everything that we do here. And it's just, it's good when it's just seamless. When it just works. You want something that just works. You don't have to worry about it. I don't ever have to explain to my team how to use it. It just works. So thank you.
I love hearing this. Thank you. Actually, we always talk at Docusign about our Docu-love stories, where you tell somebody, you work at Docusign, and oftentimes the reaction is, I love Docusign.
Yeah. I'm one of those. Before we jump in, tell everyone a little bit about yourself and your journey to where we are today. And for those that aren't aware of Docusign, give them kind of an overview as well.
Thank you. So, well, first we talk about Docusign. It is really the premier e-signature product. Many of you probably have bought a home from there, leased a car, actually signed an employment offer. We're a lot more than that. Actually, what we are is we have the Docusign Agreement Cloud, and the Agreement Cloud is really a platform that has you go through the life cycle of a document. And so we're way more than e-signature, but we're known, I think, worldwide for our e-signature products. So I joined Docusign a little over 3 years ago. I had come from another organization, another tech company. And in fact, that company had been purchased by a private equity firm. And that was in 2016. And I decided that I was done, have had a long career in human resources. And the current CEO, who was a boss of mine a few companies ago, actually kind of lured me out of retirement to be the Chief People Officer at Docusign. My family thought I was crazy, didn't want me to do it at all. And but I have to tell you, it was the best decision I ever made. Yeah. Docusign's an amazing company. We've been growing very quickly. It's a very strong brand. The leadership team is their values are wonderful, and the company's mission is something we really believe in. So that's why I'm at Docusign. But I won't bore you with all of my details, but I started my career in human resources many years ago at John Hancock Financial Services in Boston, which is where I grew up. And then from there, have worked in a number of different tech companies, mostly in the Silicon Valley. But I would say Docusign is really the fastest growing of all of them. So even on my worst day, and I don't have many bad days, I'm grateful for that decision, and for my former boss who wanted to get me out of retirement.
Amazing. I can't tell you how many CHROs I speak to, like yourself, that planned on retiring, and then a former CEO or a former boss ends up convincing them to come out of retirement and join the business. It happens far too often.
Well, if you have a boss that you worked with before too, who you understand and understands you, it really makes it so much easier to, integrate into an organization. So that's been really helpful.
How was the transition for you? Was it based where you currently were where you were located at the time? Did you move, or what was?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually had moved from the Bay Area. So when Dan first called me up, I said, Dan, I live in New Hampshire now. I moved 3,000 miles away. I'll give you names of people that you should talk to. And he continued to pursue me and carry on with the conversation. And so when I made the decision to go back, within our headquarters is in San Francisco. My work schedule was 3 weeks in San Francisco, where I have a small one-bedroom apartment, like 6-minute walk from the office. And then I would work 1 week of the month in my house in New Hampshire. But since March 5th, obviously, I have been here.
Wow. Is that going to stay the same? You think you go back to that schedule?
Well,
sounds like a lot of travel.
I certainly hope so. I actually love being in the office. I love seeing people, collaborating with others. So, this has been hard on all of us. And I'm really looking forward to actually returning to that 3 weeks San Francisco, 1 week New Hampshire.
Yeah. Well, that kind of leads us on to the kind of the things that we're talking about in the show, is I know you're very passionate about is securing great work-life balance for your staff in the team. So talk about how you've been achieving that over the last sort of 9 months, whilst we've all been figuring out this new world we're living in.
Well, I'm not sure I'd give ourselves an A on figuring out this work-life balance in a pandemic. We recently did our engagement survey, and understandably, that was probably the lowest score that we got on the survey, was this whole notion of, how to help people, manage their lives and their work. It's particularly difficult for our caregivers. Most of them are parents, and we have about 1,000 employees who've got children under the age of 10. So they're trying to juggle homeschooling sometimes, and their job, and having a spouse that's working out of the house. What we're really trying to focus on with people is help them understand their need to create their own boundaries. It isn't always easy. One of the things I will say that we found from the survey is that people do not miss their commute one bit.
I'm one of those people as well.
Yeah, in the Bay Area and in Seattle, where our major offices are, as well as Chicago, people would be spending maybe 2 or 3 hours a day sometimes getting to work. A lot of people have been saying it's been great for them to have that time to focus on healthy things for themselves, working out, doing meditation, doing yoga. As I said, we haven't got this all figured out, but we're really, really trying to work with managers to help people have a flexible schedule if they need to. So if a parent needs to be off for a couple of hours in the middle of the day to take care of a situation with their child, they'll get back on later on in the day. So flexibility, personal boundaries, those are really the things that we're trying to help folks with.
How did you support your managers then? Because most of our managers took the brunt of this, didn't they? Not only are they going through it themselves, but they're now having to be kind of the go-to person for all of your employees as well. How did you support them through this?
I have to say, I'm so proud of our people managers. They've really met the moment, and they've really stepped up. We have hired a lot of people during this shutdown, so we've had to get them comfortable about hiring remotely and hiring people that they haven't met in person, about how they help to connect those new employees with their team members. There's a group of folks who don't know their team members, and that's really important from a cultural perspective to make sure that those new folks have a sense of what it's like to work at Docusign. Our managers have been the ones who've been doing special things to be able to get them sort of connected to their teams. We've also provided a number of sort of online learnings and resources for them to help them understand what it's like to now work in a remote environment, to how they have to maybe sort of like shift some of their way of working to make sure that people feel connected. So it's been a combination of a number of different things, but as I said, our people managers, they are holding up the company right now.
Yeah. But at the same time as well, I feel like and I'm speaking to a lot of my friends who are managers, they almost feel some sense of empowerment now as well, because we're having to really put a lot of trust in there. And it's that, and because we're doing that, they're becoming more engaged. We can't micromanage anymore. Although some companies are still trying to do it through technology, most of us are now taking the approach of putting that trust in our people and our managers. And that's really shining through, and people are feeling that throughout the organization.
Yes, I think that's right, Chris. And also, what's been interesting is because everyone is remote, we're kind of all on a level playing field, right? So, our remote employees who are normally, are not connected to an office, and that's about 15% of our employees. They're not any more advantaged or disadvantaged than the people who are coming from the San Francisco office, who, don't have the opportunity to sort of just drop into their boss's office, their colleague's office. So there is something about us all being the same right now that's challenging, but I'm really thinking ahead about what is it going to be like for managers to manage a really hybrid workforce where some might be in the office all the time, others are fully remote and could live 2 or 3 time zones away. And then there are those that want a hybrid or a flexible situation where they're going to come in maybe 2 or 3 days a week to work, to collaborate with their employees. I'm really thinking with my talent development group now about that. How do we support them in that environment? What are the tools that they need? What are the programs we should be putting in place?
Yeah, that's a big challenge for everyone. I've been speaking a lot, as you can imagine, with your peers for the last couple of months, because having some employees at home, some working in the office, others doing a hybrid, super complex. And let's face it, most of the systems, tools, and processes we have in businesses right now do not fit that model whatsoever. Exactly. As well. So we need to kind of throw them out and start from scratch as well. So I don't think there's anyone who really has the answers yet, but we're kind of on that journey. And I think over the next year, we're going to see how that starts to play out. And also that depends on which kind of route you're going. And I'd love to hear that from you. Are you going kind of I know some companies are going all remote, some going hybrid. What is the decision that you and the team have made?
So we're calling our position and the approach we're taking an employee first. So as opposed to a remote only or remote first, we want to put our employees and how they want to work and where they want to work at the center of the decisions that we are making. What I believe will be the case is that Docusign isn't a company that's ever going to go 100% remote. It just kind of isn't in our DNA. And we also know that from the survey we just did. We asked people what their preference was, and there was 7% who wanted to be in the office, 40% wanted to be fully remote, but 53% wanted a hybrid situation. What we are saying, however, is that as we develop our processes, we want those to be really remote first processes. So for example, we've had to do all of our onboarding in a remote fashion. Well, I think when we go back to the office and people are coming into the office, we'll probably still do onboarding remotely. We'll probably still send computers to our new employees' home so they get there the Friday before the Monday they start, versus having them walk into the office and hand it to them. There's some efficiencies that are really working well. So what we want to do is to take what's best about what we've learned from this experience, but that also make sure that we're giving our employees the experience they want. Because if we sort of dictate this is how it's going to be, I think they'll leave, because there are other employers who will give them that kind of flexibility. So I think this has truly shifted how companies think about this. And it's also required some of our managers who've maybe had a little bit more of an old-fashioned point of view and thought that their team really did need to be in the office, or at least needed to be in 4 days a week. And now they're recognizing that's not the case at all. We have not lost any productivity. So it's helped shift some of those managers who had maybe a little bit more rigid point of view to be a little bit more flexible.
Yeah. I love the example you gave, by the way, about sending the computer to them first. There's nothing worse when you start a new job and walking in and not really understanding, oh, here's my new computer. Where is it? Well, whereas you kind of feel like you're already settled in, you've got your computer, you're set up, you're ready to go from day one. It's a small example, but those things really, really matter. Yeah,
they do. And, before our shutdown, we had a program we called Discovering Docusign, and we would send every new employee, regardless of where they were in the world, to our Seattle office, and they would spend 2 days there, meeting the leaders, learning the product, doing collaboration, and then the capstone of that was at the end of the second day, we did a volunteer event where the employees would go to a food bank and volunteer in Seattle. And it was really an important statement for us because we felt it was a way to get them to really understand the Docusign culture very early on. But now that we've had to change that, we've had to completely make it a virtual experience, which we now do over 2 days in shorter segments. The plus side is we've been able to add our CEO into every one of those sessions in a Ask Me Anything context. So all of our employees actually get to see Dan, our CEO, on Zoom, where they could not have before because we couldn't have flown them up to Seattle once a month to be able to sort of spend that much dedicated time. Mm-hmm. So that's an example where I think we have lost something, but we've gained something too.
Yeah, that's another great example because before, and I hope those are our examples that are here to stay. There's so many great things that come out of this, and I just hope we take them with us, the good things on the other side along. Correct me if I'm wrong. Did you say that you've hired over 1,000 people during the last 8 months, or did I just make that up?
No, it's actually more than that.
More than 1,000.
It's been more like around 1,500 people or so.
Wow. What are some learnings you could share with people, in terms of, what went well in terms of remote work, remote onboarding, and what are some lessons that you learned that you could share with our listeners of perhaps what not to do?
So I would say that what went well, even though at first managers took a gulp, as I said, because they were like, I'm not sure I'm comfortable hiring somebody I've never seen. We were able to say to them, if you don't, someone else will. So I feel like we really pivoted that one quickly and managers really did a good job. So I think the hiring has, using Zoom, we've been able to sort of like be more focused and more intentional about who we have people interview with. There've been times in the past where it was easy if somebody was coming in just to say, "Oh, talk to this one and that one." I mean, I'm not sure we gave the candidates a great experience. Now it's a lot more focused, and the right people who need to be part of the interview panel really are on the interview panel. So I would say that's been a real plus. We had a little bit of a hiccup at one point with onboarding and sending people's computers to homes. At first we were doing it, our IT staff was doing it, but it started to get a little unwieldy because there were so many people who were hiring. So we used an outside vendor who frankly, you know, let us down. You know, so we had to pivot on that one and, you know, put in SLAs and even consider another vendor, because what was happening was sometimes our employees, new employees weren't getting their computer. And that is, as you just said, essential.
That's the worst start you want. Yeah, so you don't want that.
You know, essential. So those are a couple things that I think that have gone well. And then, as I said, I mentioned discovering Docusign, where we lost something, but we gained something too. Mm-hmm. I will also say at first when this happened, we kind of hit the pause button on our management development, thinking that this was not going to last for long. And then when it was clear that we were going to be in this situation for a long time, you know, we then went back and looked at all of our talent development and rearranged how we thought about the segments of the components so that we could still develop our managers in a Zoom-like situation in a way that worked for them, that was digestible, because we weren't going to be able to be back in that sort of like person-to-person setting where there's a lot of great learning that happens.
How are you capturing all of this information and insights? Do you have like an LMS that you kind of feed those videos into after? What does that look like?
Yes, we do. We use Degreed as a platform, and we do have an LMS system, which and we have LinkedIn Learning. So we have a number of different tools and ways for people to be able to continue with their own interest in their own education. But we have learning paths where we can direct them to the places where they can go for learning how to be a better remote manager, or, you know, learning how to coach in a virtual environment. So we've been spending a lot of time and effort there. And, you know, when I first joined Docusign, one of the things that was clear to me was while this company had done a lot of great things and their people practices were really good, the one area where they had not invested enough was in talent development. And so one of the first things that I did was put together and hire a talent development team with the intention and the direction that they really give development opportunities to all of our employees. However, I wanted them to really focus on creating great people managers. And we say at Docusign, every employee deserves to work for a great manager, and every manager deserves the time and resources to become great. Mm-hmm. So it's an investment that we started off a few years back, and we are continuing with, regardless of whether it's virtual or in person or how we're working.
Yeah, I love that, because when we first spoke, one thing that stuck with me after our conversation was you said you often asked yourself, what can I bring to HR? And what will really make a difference? And you found in the previous organizations, I remember you telling me that if you can leave knowing that you've developed those managers, and if that manager leaves and any other company, they want that manager because they're a Docusign person who's been developed at Docusign, and that's something you're very proud of, right?
I am. That would be a wonderful legacy. Absolutely.
Yeah. I know, and especially right now, we're seeing how important our frontline managers are. They are the business. And they, you know, we communicate through them, especially now. You know, and that filters throughout the organization. So there's huge impact.
And, you know, we know that people oftentimes, you know, come to work for a person and they stay to work for that person and they leave if they're not happy with that person. So it really is a critical component of our overall HR strategy, and just having the best employee experience we could possibly deliver.
Yeah, it's super important. When people meet my team, one of the things that they're always surprised about is that every single person in our company has worked for someone else in the company before. And that's a testament to not just me, but also the rest of the team, that, you know, the talent wants to follow them wherever they go because they believe in their vision and their passion and what they do. So everyone that we've hired has kind of came through a network of people that have worked with each other before that just love working in that environment together. So why would you not? Similar with your CEO, right? Which is the reason
exactly. Exactly.
You mentioned, you know, how do we go back to better when we return? What does that look like? How do we manage the world? Have you made any decisions on that now of what that's going to look like for you, given the fact that it's hybrid model? I know it's kind of quite early to say, but
Yeah, well, we're in right now. We are very much in the planning phase around that and developing sort of what are all the components of that and the work streams that we need to think through, because there's the people strategy, which is what does the work schedule look like? How do we support managers in this new environment? How do we decide which jobs can be remote, which jobs should be hybrid, or which jobs have to be in the office? So all of that is work we are doing right now so that we can give our employees a little more clarity. But then besides that faction and that work stream going on, we also have to decide, what do we want our offices to look like? What's the work environment going to be like? I believe we will be going back to a flex situation whereby, you may do a desk reservation system. We have revised some of our offices to have more collaboration space, probably have set up what I would call kind of neighborhood pods. So if someone on the HR team comes in on a Tuesday, Thursday, and a Friday, instead of sort of like walking around the building trying to find an empty space, they know that there's a section of a floor that's sort of the HR neighborhood. So they know that they can be near their team members. But then there's so many little details, not so little details to think through. For example, for people who are fully remote, do we have a policy around T&E and how many times they actually can travel to the organization so that we don't have a situation where our travel and expense budget is just kind of out of whack? Now, on the other hand, we won't need to take on as much real estate. So there's going to be savings on that side. I'm really thinking about, what is the office like? What's the reservation system for the desks? Right now, we have one that is not going to be able to scale for a company of 5,500 employees. We're actually testing it out in our Sydney office, which is we've actually opened because there's been like virtually no cases of COVID now in Sydney. It's just amazing because there's only 160 employees there. We could use the system we have, which is, a tile on our homepage. That's not going to scale. So we're looking at bigger systems that have the ability to be able to capture information about employees when they come into the office. If we got to the point where we said to be in the office, and I'm not saying that that's our policy right now, that's a big if, but if we said, we won't require you to have a vaccine, but if you want to come into the office, you probably have to have the vaccine. So what's a system that's going to be able to capture that information? Who's had a vaccine, who hasn't had a vaccine? It's a lot of challenges around that, right? There's a lot of personal information that people aren't going to feel good about. So there are so many things, Chris, for us to figure out. But we are, really in the thick of trying to wrestle with those things and have a point of view and a position that we will be able to announce to our employees, hopefully in the next few months.
Would you say this has been the most sort of just challenging / disruptive time that you've ever had in your career?
Oh, by a long shot. I think back on previous companies and doing business continuity plans when you're supposed to think through what you would do if. And in the Bay Area, oftentimes what we would tend to do is focus on a natural disaster, right? Earthquake. What would happen if one office in our Bay Area, no one could work in the office? Would we be set up with computers for them to work at home? None of us had written the playbook for a pandemic. Didn't even imagine something like this. It's really, really challenged all of us, companies, managers, employees, and certainly if you're in the HR field, you are addressing issues that you never have before, probably never thought in your career you ever would. So, at Docusign, we say that we want it to be the place where people are doing the work of their lives. And we really mean that. We think that that's, it's important that our people are there, are happy. And it's a little different from being a best place to work, which we believe we are, and we want that too. But to say, I did the work of my life at Docusign, that's what we want. And actually, it's a question that we ask in our mid-year reviews when people do their self-evaluation. We said, are you doing the work of your life? And the intention there is to get a conversation going with your boss. And if you're not doing the work of your life, what do you need to do to do the work of your life? It's a deeply personal statement. And when I did my self-review this year, when I sat down with my boss and I answered that question, I said, when I've retired, go look back at Docusign and for all the good things that, were pre-COVID that I got to do. But boy, during this period, it's been the work of my life.
One thing that I love to talk about now is, you're taking care of so many people during this, the last 8 months. How have you been making sure that you take care of Joan? Joan?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I'm fortunate in so many ways. I'm not in a caregiving situation where I have an elderly parent that I did take care of, or teenagers, or other family members. So I'm very, very lucky, and I reminded myself of that every single day. But the way I take care of myself is to try to practice what I preach with others, which is to put some boundaries in place. Because I'm on the East Coast, my hours are a little weird sometimes. I'm doing a call maybe at 8 o'clock at night, but that's because everyone else is on the West Coast and it's 5 o'clock for them. So that is something I don't mind doing. I bought a Peloton a couple of years ago for those wintry days here in New Hampshire when I wasn't going to drive to my local gym. So I already had that down in my cellar. And it's been great to be able to sort of get down there and just make sure that I try to do it as much every day and, get that exercise, and then it's staying connected to family and friends. One of the other, for me personally, COVID silver linings is because I've been able to do family dinners with, I have a sister and a brother-in-law in Princeton, New Jersey. I have another sister in Boston. I've got a nephew in New York, and we'll do Friday and Sunday night dinners. And when I was on the West Coast, it isn't something we needed to do. But it would have been harder to do it because we're all on the same time zone. So I'm spending in some ways more time with my family, even though it's on screen, that I had a chance to before. I think the hard part, of course, and I know you've experienced this too, is in the past where maybe you could have gotten something taken care of with a colleague in a quick conversation as you were like in the kitchen, maybe pour a cup of coffee, and now you gotta make an effort to get a meeting and get on the calendar and either call or Zoom. So clearly there's some inefficiencies that we miss. And I would say that's the one that people talk about the most. And people, when they say, what is it they want to go back to? What's the back to better? Many ways, the better is being with their colleagues and being with their team members.
Yeah. The funny thing is, I'm not sure if you noticed it, but I said to my team, even this morning, I said to one of the members, they'll kind of put a Zoom call in my diary just to ask a question. Like, just give you a call. And now, as I just said to the team, or a Slack message or whatever it may be, because now everyone's kind of reverting to scheduling in anything you want to talk to each other about, you schedule it. Like, rather than, because they're so worried about kind of interrupting people, or you don't know, because whereas in the office you can see, oh look, Chris is free, or he's going to grab a coffee.
Yes.
Let me quickly go over there and ask him a question. Whereas you don't have those social cues virtually. You can't see those. So you are right. That's something I'm seeing with the team. And it's actually sometimes slowing us down. Whereas now I'll just pick up the phone, but like, what do you think about this? No problem. And then I'm down. But then again, you don't want to interrupt them with family. And it's a difficult balance. What are the other areas that come to mind that, lessons learned that you've over the last 8 months that you're going to take with you next year?
I think one of the things that I think I've noticed in our management team that I really applaud, that I hope we all take with us, is a sense of compassion and empathy that perhaps we didn't have in the past. We might have been sort of like heads down, business focused, result oriented, all of that. Of course, we're running a business, we need to do that. But, I hope that a spirit of generosity, and by generosity, I'm not really talking about monetary generosity, but I'm talking about that generous spirit of being able to be with a person and meet them with the challenges that they're having. And people are having a lot of challenges. I get my HR business partners, work with their local teams all the time. Mental health is one thing right now that we know people are struggling with. And so what's come out of that is we've recently put in a new mental health benefit through an outside provider on top of what we already offered in our insurance program and EAP. So I would say it's that empathy of really trying to make sure you understand what that employee is going through and the employee experience, and listening and paying attention and taking action, maybe sooner than you might have in the past to help alleviate, what would be a troubling situation for someone.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you. And I do think that's one of the silver linings as well that's come out of this kind of leading with empathy. Is something which I've seen a different side of leaders, and I've become closer to all of my team throughout this, and we've bonded in a different way. And I feel like we all feel strength in vulnerability, if I can put it that way. Whereas in the past, we'd be so worried about what people may think. And, I've suffered from depression and anxiety. I've talked about that on the podcast. And it took me years, many, many years to feel comfortable to discuss that with my team. And when I did, I realized it's actually probably one of the most powerful things I could do, is to open that conversation.
Yeah, Chris, I've often thought that leaders who show their vulnerability, as you said, they just become more powerful. It's such an important thing. And it's such a position of strength, even though it may seem like it isn't.
Yeah.
But vulnerable leaders, they're the ones I say I admire the most.
Before we wrap up, I want to surprise you, and I'm going to jump into our quick fire round, which I do with every guest, but I never tell anyone in advance. So I just surprise everyone. So I'm going to ask you 5 questions, and you have no longer than 30 seconds to give us some amazing answers. Are you ready?
All right. Okay.
What was the number one thing that was holding you back from becoming a chief people officer?
Feeling like I wasn't good enough.
What's the best piece of business advice you've ever received?
Be authentic.
What's one book that you recommend to our audience and why?
It's not going to be a business book.
No, it doesn't have to be a business book or HCM.
All right. It was a book called The Tender Bar. It's an autobiography called The Tender Bar. It's probably about 10 years old now.
Why did you recommend that one?
The writing was so spectacular, and the story that this man told about his life was poignant and funny and sad and challenging, and it had just the elements of everything. And it's just a great. J.R. Mulringer is the author.
Amazing. What's some online resources that you use to stay up to date with current events? If you go on the browser or on your phone, how do you stay in touch with what's happening in the business landscape, in general?
So here's my routine in the morning. New York Times online, Boston Globe online, San Francisco Chronicle online, and the Post. So those are my sources. That usually is an hour or so in the morning. Those are my go-to places. Other than that, for business things, it's a lot of things in Wall Street Journal or LinkedIn. I learned tons from just looking at my LinkedIn feed. That's you can spend hours just sort of catching up there.
I love the fact that you give yourself a very broad perspective as well, and challenging different sources as opposed to just one, which is great as well. And then last question, what's one thing about your business that you're most excited about?
It's about the growth and our opportunity to be able to continue to hire, and we have, as we go into next year, giving people the chance to have a great career at a great company where they can do the work of their life. So it's the growth opportunity of Docusign.
Amazing. Well, look, thank you so much for taking the time out to join us on the show. It's been a real pleasure. Before I let you go, if there's one parting piece of advice you could give to the younger Joan, what would that be? And then where's the best place for people to connect with you if they want to say hello and reach out?
So I would say the piece of advice I'd give the younger Joan is don't take it so seriously. Don't be so serious, and don't worry so much. It's all going to work out just fine. And where people can find me, you can find me on LinkedIn.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Well, for everyone listening, if you enjoyed the episode, please like, comment, share. There'll be a link below to connect with Joan on LinkedIn as well. Apart from that, enjoy the rest of your day, Joan, and look forward to seeing you in the new year. Okay.
All right. Bye-bye.